Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, October 4th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Max Chafkin, features editor and writer at Bloomberg BusinessWeek, author of The Contrarian, Peter Thiel, and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power. And then, double shot today, ladies and gentlemen, executive editor of the American Prospect, David Dayen, on, wait for it, Postal banking. Chuck Schumer sets an August 31st deadline for both infrastructure bills to get a vote as progressives hold the line and make it two-track. However, did I say August? October 31st.
Oh.
Meanwhile, however, Biden pulls back on the top line to approximately $2 trillion. And meanwhile, the debt ceiling may or may not get a separate reconciliation vote. Depends on who you talk to. The Pandora, or so-called Pandora Papers, have leaked. The International Consortium of Investigative Journalists released a report revealing international wealthy, elite, and corrupt leaders and their secret money holdings.
Sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. Facebook whistleblower says that the social media behemoth will fuel any lies for its own growth. Also, sun rises in the east. Meanwhile, Amplify Energy, responsible for a major oil spill of at least 100,000 gallons washing up on the shores of Orange County, California. New York City schools vaccine mandate in effect as of today for teachers and staff, as the Washington Post reveals that the Koch network is funding the anti-mask protests.
What?
New email dump also shows that Betsy DeVos and the Department of Education under Donald Trump collaborated with men's rights activists to rewrite campus rape guidelines. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is the beginning of a new week. Hope you're feeling refreshed from the weekend. There is a buoyancy in this office that has not been here really since the beginning of, I believe,
the
NFL season.
On Mondays.
Yeah, on Mondays.
I recover most weeks. Last week, I don't think I recovered the whole week.
It took to close early like Thursday.
Good, thank you.
But the Giants won, so Emma Vigeland is here with a massive smile on her face.
Yes, even though I did break my phone yesterday, that's not enough to keep me down.
Well, you should be more specific. You broke your phone during the game because you threw it because you were mad at the Giants.
Nope, that didn't happen.
All right.
That I thought was a personal conversation, but
you brought up the phone breaking, and I wanted to make it clear that you weren't just sort of picking out a random thing, that it was directly related to what happened with the Giants.
Yeah, I guess I was like trying to walk a fine line here, but like honestly, again, this is what I'm saying. This will a new Apple product will have to be sacrificed as tribute.
That's the amazing thing.
Every weekend. So if you miss like a few old computers over the weekend in the office, like don't worry about it.
Right.
We do have a whole bunch of like old Mac Minis.
Yeah, we do. I mean, they're literally like 12 years old. I think they were 12 years old when I got them.
I want to smash it like an Office Space while I'm wearing like a Odell Beckham Jr. jersey or something. Still my guy.
Whatever works, I guess. I was just lamenting that I was up until almost midnight watching a field goal bounce off one of the field goal posts, but I did have a good day with the Red Sox, so we can move forward.
And I just want to clarify, I'm so sorry. It was it really wasn't that hard. I pushed it against the couch and it hit a buckle on my purse. So like it wasn't, I don't have anger issues. Anyway.
Tell it to the judge.
And the Jets won.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, whatever. Who cares about the Jets? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it. If you recall, at the end of a day on Friday, what had happened was that the Progressive Caucus had done something that they had never done before, which was basically shatter the plans of the Democratic leadership to essentially kowtow to 9 members or 10 members of a corporatist caucus led by Josh Gottheimer. The Progressive Caucus representing, well, and we don't know if the numbers were 50 or 80 or 100 who were willing to not vote for the bipartisan infrastructure bill without the reconciliation bill, essentially doing the heavy lifting on behalf of the Biden administration. And then all of a sudden, guess what? The sky did not fall. They have now punted it to at least must be done by August 31st. I think 31st is a Saturday. Oh, gosh. October 31st. I think it is a Saturday. If I remember correctly, October 31st this year is a Sunday, actually, because that is Halloween, and I've already made plans, and there's a lot of like negotiations that go on around that with my kids in Halloween for divorced families, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how I know that. So it's really on that Friday they need to get it done, I believe, although they could theoretically do the session on Saturday and Sunday. But the bottom line is progressives held the line. Biden right now is trying to figure out how to get down to a top line number that is closer to $2 trillion. There is a myriad of ways that can happen. We've talked about that. You can means test programs, you can front load programs, you can shorten the duration of these programs and leave it up to future. We'll talk more about that in the coming days. But one of the highlights of Friday was also that one of the 2 major reasons, if not the biggest reason why the Democratic agenda is being thwarted, she decided to leave Washington, D.C., because she had to do some donor meetings, and apparently over the weekend she had to teach.
And she had a doctor's appointment, right, for her foot.
And a foot doctor's appointment.
And then also went on a donor retreat that included a hike.
Oh, it's nice. Get it out in the air.
I hope that doctor's appointment must have really fixed your foot. I want to know if she was a part of that donor hike. Somebody find out for me.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, maybe, and nevertheless, Kristen Sinema was at Arizona State University, and she apparently teaches a class. I'm not sure what the class is about, but there were organizers from Lucha, which is a organization that defends immigrants.
Living United for Change in Arizona, and it's also Spanish for struggle.
And they confronted Kirsten Sinema outside a classroom where she's teaching. She would not engage with them, and some of them, I think, actually followed her into the restroom. Let's watch this.
Okay, I'll be back.
Seder, we want to talk to you real quick. Can we talk to you real quick?
Hi, actually, I am heading out.
But right now is a real moment that our people need in order for us to be able to talk about what's really happening. We need a Build Back Better plan right now.
We knocked on doors. We need solutions, and the Build Back Better plan has the solutions that we need.
We knocked on doors for you to get you elected, and just how we got you elected, we can get you out of office if you don't support what you promised us.
We need 7 million citizenship for 7 million. We need the Build Back Better plan right now.
My name is Blanca. I was brought here to the United States when I was 3 years old. And in 2010, my grandparents both got deported because of SB 1070. And I'm here because I definitely believe that we need a pathway to citizenship. My grandfather passed away 2 weeks ago, and I was not able to go to Mexico and visit him because there is no pathway to citizenship. And if we have the opportunity to pass it right now, then we need to do it, because there's millions of undocumented people just like me who share the same story or even worse things that happen to them because of SB 1070 and because of anti-immigrant legislation. And this is the opportunity to pass it right now, and we need to hold you accountable to what you told us, what you promised us that you were going to pass when we knocked on doors for you. It's not right.
I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor of human trafficking, and it's because of the lack of worker protections that we don't have in the gig economy. I need you to stand by workers. Lots of people who are like me who became homeless
and there are a lot of people telling on themselves who are way more outraged that Sinema wasn't able to pee in private than they are about her stance.
I have to say, I hadn't seen that particular clip. And I thought it was supposed to be, based upon what I saw on Twitter, I thought it was going to be a lot more aggressive. These are people going in there reading prepared statements. They had the opportunity to have an audience with her. I have been in, multi-stall bathrooms before, hearing other people talk. And it is really something that I got over.
Right. Well,
I thought this was, honestly, but based upon the Twitter, what I saw on Twitter, I thought this was going to be much, much more dramatic.
Based upon Sinema's statement, I thought there was a crime committed, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
What, can we read her statement?
Yeah. So, I mean, she has a statement where she basically, we can put this up. Yesterday, several individuals disrupted my class at Arizona State University after deceptively entering a locked, secure building. These individuals filmed and publicly posted videos of my students without their permission. She's very concerned about her students, including footage taken of both my students and I using a restroom where that's like holding hands while I don't know. In Arizona, we love the First Amendment. We know it is vital to our democracy, blah, 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 blah. The activist group that engaged in yesterday's behavior is one that both my team and I have met with several times since I was elected to the Senate, and I will continue engaging with Arizonans with diverse viewpoints to help inform my work for Arizona. Yesterday's behavior was not legitimate protest. This is like her outrage part. It is unacceptable for activist organizations to instruct their members to jeopardize themselves by engaging in unlawful activities such as gaining entry to closed university buildings, disrupting learning environments, and filming students in a restroom. She keeps doubling down on that. The rest of this is just pablum, but she's very concerned about her students, not her public image. She's concerned about her students.
I also think that the organization and these people are responsible for themselves if they're committing an act of civil disobedience in that way, and they're doing so non-violently, and they are doing so because they want to express the urgency of the situation and the callousness in which Sinema is approaching it. I think it's completely within their rights. She shouldn't Senate-splain them.
Right, and they are also her constituents. They are a member of an Arizona activist group, so she has to listen to them because by definition she serves them. And she is overstating how much she has met with activist groups recently. There has been considerable reporting about how she has been not taking any local groups' calls. What she's doing is these donor retreats where they do a cocktail hour and then a morning hike, which is exactly what she flew out of DC to do. And so Lucha has been enormously successful. If everybody remembers Joe Arpaio, the sheriff from down there, they were instrumental in his ousting. So she better get it together, because this is not the kind of group that she wants to have on her bad side, although I think that's pretty much
it's also
done
unclear
by now.
Just what her agenda is, but we will have more to say to that in the coming days. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be talking with Max Chafkin, he's the features editor and writer at Bloomberg BusinessWeek, author of The Contrarian, Peter Thiel, Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power. Right back after this. Folks, you may not know this. Companies around the world produce 2 billion pounds of new plastic every day. A ton of that ends up in the ocean, incidentally. Yet no matter how much we put in our recycling bin, just 9% of plastic actually gets recycled. In other words, you want to create less or purchase or use less plastic. Well, at Grove Collaborative, they believe it's time to stop making single-use plastic. You've heard me talk about Grove for a couple of years now, actually, at least. It's the online marketplace. It delivers healthy home, beauty, personal care products, all sorts of those, and they send it directly to you. Makes it very easy. If you're looking for natural green products, super easy, one-stop shop. Every product is guaranteed to be good for you, your family, your home, and the planet. Grove carries brands that you may know and love, like Mrs. Meyer's, but they also have their best-selling Grove-made products, like seedling tree-free paper towels. Or you can try the Grove laundry detergent dispenser, which cuts plastic waste by 80%. This thing's actually really cool. It's just like a carafe, and it's got one of those things where you tilt it, the perfect amount of detergent comes out, and then you pour it in. It is idiot-proof for people like myself. I use, I get like 7th generation from there, but I also have a huge stockpile of Grove branded foaming soap. They have a pineapple. The kids love that one. And just no scented soap, because that's the way I roll, ladies and gentlemen. I think everybody knows that by now. Grove was my go-to during the pandemic, too, the lockdown, because nobody, with a few places you get toilet paper. Join over, and it is a seedling. It is like a bamboo toilet paper, I think it is. You can join over 2 million households who choose to shop sustainably at Grove. Plus, shipping fast and free on your first order. Check it out, folks. Choosing products that are better for you and the planet has never been easier. So for a limited time, when our listeners go to grove.com/majority, grove.com/majority, you're going to get to choose a free starter set with your first order. Go to grove.com/majority to get your exclusive offer. That's grove.com/majority. Check it out, folks. We will put the link to that in our podcast and YouTube description. Want to welcome to the program Max Chafkin. He's a features editor and writer at Bloomberg BusinessWeek, author of The Contrarian. Peter Thiel, Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power. Max, welcome to the program. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, all right, let's get right into this in terms of Thiel. I have to concede, I'm not as interested in his sort of biographical aspects and how he gets through. I think it can be summed up. He was a nerd. He was bullied. He decided to take it. He ran into the fountainhead, and then all of a sudden, it's off to the races.
Yeah, I think you've got it there.
And he decides to become. Well, let's just talk about. I think this is important. The Rene Girard elements of him adopting this contrarian posture. Speak to that for a moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, Thiel's basic idea, which he has said kind of informs his, investment philosophy, and people who are really into him in Silicon Valley are very into this. It's Rene Girard talks about the way people imitate each other, and that he says, basically said, he's dead now, we want the things that we want because other people desire them. Peter Thiel has said this was like a key insight that helped him sort of figure out how to be, this great contrarian investor. I mean, I think part of the appeal of Rene Girard to Thiel was that Rene Girard was a conservative and Thiel was a conservative, and what was going on in Thiel's life. I know you didn't want to get into the backstory stuff, but what was going on in his life when he got into Rene Girard was he started this activist student newspaper at Stanford, the Stanford Review, which kind of modeled on the Dartmouth Review, Cornell Review. And these guys were basically, with Thiel as the leader, were basically, attempting to kind of, as they saw it, whatever, take the piss out of the libs, to say things that were outrageous, either walking right up to or crossing the line on things like race, gender, et cetera.
And I should say, I knew guys like this in college. I'm more or less the same age as Peter Thiel. I'm maybe a year or two older than him. And had he gone to Alabama, which he would have never gone to, but had he gone to Alabama, he could have been, he could be, I don't know, doing a takeover of the administration building for the sake. He wanted to stick out. And one of the things that I want to ask you about in terms of, just so we can set this table, because I'm really more interested in how he is flexing his power now. What was he really that good of an investor? Obviously the guy's got $5 billion. So, he's good, but you outlined him multiple times where he tried to sort of get out of Facebook, sell off Facebook, sell PayPal earlier. It's sometimes you get lucky. And then when you hit a certain amount of cash, that you have, you need to be really, really bad to get rid of it, because there's a certain amount of inertia. This is, I can tell you that there's an analogy in show business. If you get on one hit show and you become famous, it could take you a decade to become without ability to make money. You can just keep making bad decision after bad decision, and just there's a certain amount of inertia and a certain amount of just sort of cachet that exists, and you ride on that for a long time. And Donald Trump, this is a guy, if he just left his money in an index fund, would probably be richer.
Yeah, I think take your point on that. I think he's a good investor, but he's not a good investor in the way that most kind of tech people sort of think he is. And I think that you're right to question kind of the mythology, because as you said, so the mythology of Silicon Valley investors, right, is they see the future and they bet on it. That's not really what Peter Thiel has been doing his whole career. He's been trading on sort of on these Silicon Valley startups and trying to make money on them, but also taking the other trade, betting against the U.S. economy, betting, that the economy is going to collapse, which that's what happened in 2008. And that, I think, cuts against the mythology, which is, he sees the future and he's betting on the future. He's often betting against the future. As I wrote in the book, he tried to get out of PayPal pretty much as quickly as possible. After Facebook went public, he sold most of his stock. He was not, not always there cheering Mark Zuckerberg on to just keep doubling down and tripling down. Now, the thing is, I think that's all defensible from an investing standpoint. I think when you're up, it does make sense sometimes to cut your losses, but it cuts against, I'd say the mythology that Thiel's put forward. The other thing is he has failed at times, and I think those times in which he's failed is really telling. So Thiel correctly called the 2008 financial crisis, but he screwed up the trade. What happened to him, as I wrote in the book and talking to people who worked at his investment firm, at the time he had billions of dollars under management. He was like the hottest hedge fund guy on Wall Street, and he's actually living in New York at the time. He calls the economic collapse, but then he got so sort of psyched out. The thing about contrarians, right? They're always trying to find a counter take. And they already had the counter take, but they convinced themselves that they needed a counter take on top of the counter take. And as a result, he mistimed the market. His holdings basically collapsed. He had to turn the hedge fund into a family office. He lost a lot of investors' money. And that actually, as it happens, is kind of a tangent, coincides with his battle with Gawker, because Gawker had outed him in 2008, but they were also writing about this hedge fund collapse. And I think those two things together, kind of Thiel's frustration that he's being covered negatively, plus his frustration, having his sexuality become, a matter of public record, is what kind of prompted his, revenge plot against Gawker involving Hulk Hogan and the sex tape and on and on.
So I have two questions, and let me just note this. I also saw the financial crisis coming in 2008. I didn't have any money to hedge against it. And I just told my producer at the time, dude, whatever you do, do not get into an adjustable rate mortgage because there could be a problem with the real estate bubble. That was about as far as I could do.
Same age, same insights. Maybe you guys are the same guy.
But he did avoid that, and so that worked out. But where did his original cash come from?
So he made some money as a and basically worked for a year in corporate law and corporate finance. And he raised a very small amount of money from friends and family. We're talking probably, maybe $1 million or something like that from his buddies at Stanford and from his savings that he, threw together.
Yeah, I mean, I should say, just relatively speaking, $1 million, once you get out of the halls of Bloomberg, it sounds like a lot more money than just throwing stuff together. But with that said, let's talk about, what we saw in 2016. I'm really curious about what he's doing, like what his political agenda is. I'm fascinated by him, but what you've written about him sort of cozying up to Trump because of Google, and we should say he also has made in your reporting, and I think maybe it was known as well, that he's not a big fan of competition. He has no problem principally with the idea of monopoly. He just wants it to work for him as opposed to against him, right? I mean, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you're pointing to a bunch of different contradictions. And I think the kind of easiest explanation, both the explanation for why Thiel supported Trump in 2016 and why he's gone after Google is that Peter Thiel's, is out for Peter Thiel. I think that there are aspects of Trump and Trumpism, I think that appeal to Thiel. But I think he basically saw it as a trade. He saw it as a way to get influence and to be, admitted into the inner circle of a U.S. president, which would be helpful both to, his companies. He's a major shareholder in Palantir. He's the biggest shareholder in Palantir. It's a big defense contract that they've done exceedingly well, during the Trump years. And I think on the Google thing, yes, his business philosophy says that that monopoly is the endpoint of capitalism, of business, which I think really cuts against what most of us think of as being capitalism. I mean, it's an exceedingly radical point of view, or maybe he's just saying the quiet part out loud or something. And what he's done is sort of, he's continued to sit on the board of Facebook and at the same time, criticizing Google, directing a lot of this kind of anti-tech energy towards Google, which of course is, Facebook's main competitor and the main competitor or a competitor of Palantir, main competitor of many of Thiel's investments.
All right. Well, let me I just want to sort some of this out because it is not his concept of a monopoly being okay when it's a monopoly that I have influence over. And I would say he probably said the same thing about government, is straight out of Mont Pelerin. I mean, this is early neoliberalism as, in its most specific design. The idea that and it's also consistent with his notion of, and I think there's a quote, freedom and democracy are not compatible. And I mean, these are people who believe that there is some group of people who are of a higher ilk and they should be in charge of everything. And so, but I want to dig more into this Google thing because, let me ask you this first. What you say it was like a trade-off with Trump. What was the part that he had a problem with?
Yeah, I think that there's some stylistic issues, where I think Trump and Thiel are on sort of opposite ends of the, personality spectrum. I also think that Thiel is just, objects to some of the coarseness or whatever with respect to Trump. But I think you raise a good point. On many of the core issues, Thiel is hardcore on immigration. Trump is hardcore on immigration. Thiel regards, this idea of political correctness, as he calls it, this idea that we're not allowed to say these things as like one of the key problems in American society. And of course, that was, I think, the kind of one of the premises of Trump's candidacy, one of the core parts of the appeal. I guess what a lot of outsiders, the reason a lot of people found it surprising is just because Trump was running more or less on a reactionary candidacy, and Thiel has, basically for his entire career talked about this need to make the future happen faster, and he promotes himself as this great futurist. And I think, there's just something inconsistent about those two things. But as you point out, when you get down to it, there is actually a lot of ideological agreement.
I'm curious about the anti-Googleism. I am curious about the idea of freedom and democracy no longer compatible, the anti-political correctness, this notion of freedom, because I'm looking at reflections, sort of shadows of that in our society, in our discourse. So, we can look at like someone like the Mercers, for instance, and see where they've spent their dollars in developing stuff. It feels a little bit more obscured with Thiel. I'm curious about Rumble, and I'm curious about JD Vance, and I'm curious about what his project is, because one of the things, like I see these reflections, at least in our little world, is Glenn Greenwald, who was actually spied on by Palantir years ago, and has now become at least somewhat of a, I wouldn't say necessarily a booster of JD Vance, but certainly is coming out and saying some sort of positive things. He's become a specific critic of Google in terms of their, but not offering any type of antitrust stuff, right? It's just like a malevolent figure where there's no structural reform to be had. Just deal with that. All of this looks to me very Peter Thielian.
Yeah, well, I think so a couple of things there, and people who are listening probably already know this, but JD Vance, in addition to writing Hillbilly Elegy, and becoming famous for that and having a Netflix movie based on it, et cetera, worked for Peter Thiel around the same time as a venture capitalist. He runs a venture capital firm now called Naria that Thiel is a major investor in. The way these VC firms work, right? Like an anchor investor like Peter Thiel can help more or less create the firm. So Thiel is a super important business partner to JD Vance in his private life, and of course has donated $10 million to JD Vance's super PAC. I think that the way Thiel's money works, so Thiel is not a very hands-on guy. I think what he's very good at is sending signals to people like JD Vance and to other Republican politicians, right? That he is out there willing to spend big money on these kind of Trumpist candidates who are going to go hard on immigration, who are going to, as you say, talk about tech billionaires as the saviors that they are, as Peter Thiel sees them, and who are going to, basically in every way forward this like Thiel agenda. And I don't know if Rumble, so Vance and Thiel both invested in Rumble. That's a YouTube competitor at the same time that Thiel has been, criticizing Google relentlessly, and JD Vance has been criticizing Google relentlessly. And it's possible that, I think it's possible that they think, who knows, maybe there's some synergy here, and actually our criticisms will work and Rumble will take off. I also think it's a way to get some press attention for both of them, frankly. And so I don't know, I don't know how seriously to take Rumble as like a threat to Google, but this is kind of classic Thiel, which is sort of combining both, sort of political stuff with business stuff. And I think, when I was writing the book, I was reading Cokeland by Christopher Leonard. It's really good, and it kind of talks about the way there's the Coke industry is this big industrial company is feeding this political project, which was for decades, trying to take over kind of the mainstream Republican Party. And I think Thiel's kind of doing a very similar thing, but with a post-industrial. It's not a company, it's a collection of companies, but it's this conglomerate of Thiel's interests. And the political project, instead of trying to take over the Republican Party, it's trying to take over this, the Trumpist wing of the Republican Party, or to make that the Republican Party.
Yeah, I mean, it feels to me like Rumble's not necessarily a play to take away from Google as much as it is a play to create, to control a right-wing narrative, because that ultimately is just going to be like the Fox News of of, I guess, the social media video, and you want to be the one who's like sort of, curating it essentially.
Yeah, and it's nice to have some, Glenn Greenwald, of course, like, he gets, people make fun of him a lot and everything. And it's hard to, there've been so many contradictions. I think it's sometimes hard to take him seriously, but I mean, it's nice to have Glenn Greenwald on your, on your side, especially given, as you said, that Greenwald is, was involved in a story with Palantir. Palantir created this presentation, that basically, encouraged an information operation against Glenn Greenwald. It's amazing that he's done a 180 or it seems like he's done a 180 anyway on Peter Thiel. And it seems like the money's been kind of cheap. I don't know how big the contract is, right? But it's probably, in the six figures. And I know that's a lot of money, but it's not necessarily a lot of money for somebody like Thiel or even JD Vance.
Has Palantir reformed? Do you think that they're a better company with a more with a better sense of their civic responsibilities and not spying on journalists and not infringing upon our civil rights?
Well, I think I think that Palantir, like all these companies in the Thiel kind of universe, basically is run according to the dictates that are laid out in Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1 and other speeches, which more or less says that doing things that are ethically questionable, breaking the rules is okay. And I think we've seen that over and over again with Palantir. It's not just the instance that you brought up with Greenwald, but there's been reporting, in Bloomberg and others of times when Palantir's clients have crossed the line. I was told stories about Palantir salespeople, going into meetings, right, with police departments, and the people on the other side of the sales call are suggesting doing things that are unethical, and the Palantir salespeople are saying, oh, well, you're technically not allowed to do that, but they're not saying don't do it, And I think for all those reasons, we should be really, really skeptical of Palantir. I mean, I do think, like, I'm sure they've had to grow up some when you get huge government contracts. There's more compliance, I would assume, I would hope, but I think there are lots of reasons to be skeptical. And I also think it's worth being skeptical of Palantir's ethics. I also think it's worth being skeptical of the company's business claims, because a lot of times people get spun up and they think, oh, like they're big brother, they want to do this thing with Greenwald, they must be able to, basically read our minds. And I think Palantir actually kind of, it isn't as good as they say it is. And that's another reason to kind of question the company that doesn't have anything to do with ethics, just has to do with their kind of capabilities.
Well, fascinating stuff, Max. Chafkin, features editor and writer at Bloomberg BusinessWeek, author of The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Let's bring David Dayen right on, if we can, ladies and gentlemen.
Right on.
This is, for people who have watched this program for any period of time or listened to this program, they will know that there are really two things that can get me out of the bed in the morning. And that is a discussion about Social Security solvency, or
tort,
or maybe three, or a good tort case,
or an Apple discussion.
I'm talking politically, and the other is postal banking. And so it is with an enormous amount of excitement I welcome on the executive editor of the American Prospect, one of the only other people I know who probably be as excited about postal banking as I, without sort of like writing a book about it. David Dayen. David, it's great to see you.
Hey, it's an interesting day here.
You have a breaking story.
That's right. The United States Postal Service has taken its first steps to reestablishing a postal banking system in America.
Let's go.
There you go. Now, when you say reestablish, people are like, what? We had postal banking until when? Like the 60s, yes?
Yeah. From 1911 to 1967, we had postal savings accounts in the U.S. At its height in the 1940s, I believe, over 4 million people had a bank account with the Postal Service.
Wow.
And this new setup won't exactly look like that. It will be a bit more modern. It's starting with really a direct competition, not so much with the banking system, but with the alternative financial services that are very predatory towards people who don't have bank accounts currently. Walk us through why this is a big deal. I mean, because I don't think people understand just how few people can afford a bank account essentially in this country, and how much they're getting fleeced by not having a bank account. So the latest statistics are that about 1 in 4 households have little or no access to financial services. They're either unbanked, which means they don't have a bank account at all, or they're underbanked, which means they might have a bank account, but they can't get all the services, the financial services that they need. And so they go to alternative financial services providers, check cashing stores, payday lenders, pawn shops, what have you. And those businesses are incredibly predatory. Back in 2014, when there was the first real major white paper about reestablishing postal banking, the white paper estimated that people who are unbanked and underbanked make about $25,000 a year on average, and they spend about $2,000 a year on postal on financial services, on interest and fees and all of these types of things. So this is a tremendous amount of somebody's overall payment, and it just shows how expensive it is to be poor in the United States. And so if you created a postal bank account, the number one reason to do it is to promote financial inclusion, to allow people who are unbanked and underbanked to have some access to the financial system. The secondary thing is to, I'm sorry, just a second.
No, it's
the
all
secondary thing. Yeah, the secondary thing is to raise money, to create revenue, a new revenue source for the Postal Service. But even that revenue source will be much smaller and will create much more savings for these individuals than having to use check cashing stores, payday lenders, et cetera.
Well, you answered my question there. The bulk of these fees that are associated with, say, you are underbanked or you're not banked at all, are through these payday lenders and predatory loans, which have been, by the way, greenlit and okayed and loosened in terms of restrictions for decades now by the legislature.
Right.
Well, I want to talk about those fees, though, right? I think you said $5. Yeah. Is it $5 or $5.95 for up to $500? Is that what it is? And
yeah. Okay. So let's explain what this is. Yeah. So right now, the Postal Service sells gift cards. They sell Olive Garden gift card, Barnes and Noble, Starbucks, what have you. They also sell a generic Visa gift card. So this is like what you see at the supermarket, right? And they sell them for $5.95. And you can put any amount of money on these gift cards when you buy them. So what they're saying, really, this is the only innovation here. This is a very limited pilot. It's only happening in 4 cities and at 1 post office location in each city. And the cities are Falls Church, Virginia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., and the Bronx, New York. In the Bronx, location is in Baychester. So anyway, instead of having to pay cash for these gift cards that are already sold at the post office, you can use a payroll check or a business check, and they can be up to $500. So $5.95 for a $500 check is, a little bit more than 1% of the value of that payroll check. Most large check cashing services charge you a percentage rate of 3%, 3% of the value of the check. And so for a $500 check, that would be $15. So you're getting a somewhat significant savings, about 2/3, by using the Postal Service. Now, I feel like this is too much money because
if you have a $250 and if you have a $250 check, all of a sudden,
that's right. It's all of a sudden it's larger.
Yeah.
Walmart has a flat rate as well. Flat rate isn't necessarily a problem if you underprice the competition. Walmart has a flat rate for up to $500. I believe up to $1,000. They charge you $4. The Postal Service needs to get under $4 for this service. Initially, when I talked to the American Postal Workers Union, they said they wanted to see this between $2 and $3. So I think what's happening right now is they're literally just testing the system to see if it will work. Already, gift cards are $5.95. They kept the number the same. They're testing to see, can I scan a check and get the gift card into somebody's hands? And if I can do that, then I'll go out not only to multiple locations within a city, but I will also, deal with the price point situation so that we can increase the volume.
Okay, you mentioned the union. This is the part that I found fascinating about it, because talk about the history of the. We've had Mark Dimmenstein on the program back in the day, specifically to talk about the sort of the burden on the post office to pre-fund its health insurance and 75 years out, which is a bizarre requirement, but. Tell us the union's involvement in this historically and what they did in this instance. And then Louis DeJoy is, I don't have to like this guy now, do I?
Well, let's go through it. So the American Postal Workers Union has been a long and strong supporter of postal banking. I remember at Netroots Nation in 2014, I did a panel discussion, and I had a member of the Postal Workers Union there, the executive to the president, who was Diemenstein at the time, along with other people who were advocates. So this has been a long time coming. So in 2016, the Postal Workers Union, their contract was up. And they said, okay, we're going to demand a pilot for postal banking in our collective bargaining agreement.
Why?
And they did.
Why are they so interested in this?
Well, the postal workers want to see the post office to be viable. And they feel that this is a way to viability. Two, it fits with the mission of the Postal Service to promote commerce and to get everybody, connect the country, get everyone involved. They feel like the volume and therefore their worth as Postal Service members can be expanded through the production of good financial services. I think they see it in the same way that a lot of people see it, is that this is about promoting commerce and promoting financial inclusion first, but it also does create a revenue source for the Postal Service and makes it more indispensable.
Right.
So anyway, 2016 rolls around, they ask for this in contract negotiations, and they win it in contract negotiations. Since 2016, there has been this memorandum that says you Postal Service has to create pilots for a postal banking system. And the last Postmaster General, Megan Brennan, just ignored it. She just didn't do it. She just said, I'm not going to do this. There were discussions in 2017, 2018, 2019. They just didn't do it. So Louis DeJoy comes in May of 2020. And the Postal Workers Union, which has been very critical of Louis DeJoy in many, many other contexts, pretty much every other context. But in May of 2020, they come to DeJoy, they have a sit-down meeting, and they personally lobby him and say, look, this is in the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. We think that this could be a great tool to modernize the Postal Service, bring it into the 21st century. And DeJoy is a businessman, and he thinks, yeah, maybe so. And they sell him on it. And they start having these weekly meetings, these kind of secret meetings that nobody really knew about, to go over how it could be technically done. And they fall on this check cashing thing. And the reason that they did it this way is because you don't need any more authority from Congress. You do not have to get Mitch McConnell to sign off to start a postal banking pilot of this type. And the reason is they're already selling the gift cards. This is just what they can, what they can accept as payment for the gift card. Now, These are single-use gift cards. Here's where this can expand and actually become more like a bank-like product. These are single-use gift cards. What if they were reloadable, what they call reloadable gift cards? In other words, every time you get a
you paused.
Payroll check, you can cash it and put it onto this gift card. Hello? Am I here?
Sorry. Yeah, you broke up for a minute, but I think we have you back.
Okay. All right. So what I was saying is here's where this pilot, which is very limited, can turn into a bank-like product. So you have these gift cards are single-use gift cards. So you purchase them, you use them up, and you throw them away. You could make it a reloadable gift card where all of your payroll checks are put onto this card. You could have an ATM right in the Postal Service so that you can use it as a no-fee ATM for that gift card, and you can take money out in cash. You can have some sort of digital record of your balance that you could check on the gift card. And you could have a Venmo-like service where you can transfer payments from the gift card to somebody else who has that, or do location to location from one postal service, post office to another.
Well, once
So
you get
at that point,
once you get that gift card set up too, it seems to me that you could then start engaging a Venmo or whatever it is, right?
That's right.
You can use it as a revenue store. I mean, as a funding source.
Right. And right now, these are generic branded cards, but they can be branded U.S. Postal Service. The ATMs could be branded that way. And at that point, you effectively have a bank account.
Do you need any more authority to get to where you just talked about from Congress?
I mean, that's a very good question. I don't think so. But I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and we'd have to look at some of the legal aspects of this. But I think you could do a lot of this on your own. When you're talking about simple bank accounts, money orders, I mean, you know, Postal Service already does money orders right now. You could bundle them with the gift card to pay bills through the gift card. There's already an international transfer, money transfer system at the post office to 9 Latin American countries. You could do that domestically. That would be an expansion of an existing product. There's a rule in one of, I believe it's the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, that says you can't offer new products without Congress's approval. But none of these are new products. The gift cards already exist. Money orders already exist. The money transfer already exists. If you can expand those, and you can expand those enough, I think, to get you something that looks like a bank account.
And we should say, just as a, you know, I mean, this is a policy that you've got, what is it, 35,000 post offices around the country? I don't know exactly the number, but you're talking rural, urban, you're talking, I mean, this is something that would service everyone.
Every zip code.
Every zip code, obviously, and allow people who are being subject to these predatory practices just to allow them to get the money that they've been paid and use that money. You know, you're talking about people who are being people who are making $25,000 a year being subjected to like a 10% tax on top of everything else just to use their money. I have a theory about DeJoy as to why he was happy with this, because he's a logistics guy. I think he is very happy he doesn't care about the post office existing as long as it's not inhibiting the growth of the private logistics companies, it seems to me.
And also, but maybe he also just sees
it
as a cheap revenue source, right? I mean, like if he's as you say, David, he's a businessman, right? So if you can make money out of something where he's not able to tap into that market currently, and he's able to tap into that market now as head of the Postal Service.
And I think it's about logistical tactical advantage. So one of the ways that I was told that the APWU sold this to DeJoy was they talked about how in other countries, for example, Switzerland, if you have a postal bank account and you buy something online like a pair of shoes, and you get the shoes and they don't fit, you can take the shoes to the post office, say, I want to return these shoes. And also, I want to, credit my account when I get the shoes back to the retailer. And they can do that. That you can ship and do the banking at the same place at the same time. And I believe the Postal Service thinks that puts them at a tactical advantage over UPS or FedEx, where that's two different things. So it centralizes both the shipping angle and the crediting of accounts angle at the same time.
And so we don't need to have whatever it is, a majority of the Postal Commission heads in favor of this. I mean, wasn't that sort of like what we were waiting for on some level?
Yeah, well, I mean, if DeJoy's for it, and the board is right now actually majority Democratic, seemingly everybody is moving in the same direction. There are a couple vacancies still on the Postal Service Board of Governors, and I would strongly suggest that a strong postal banking advocate be among the remaining choices that gets on that board, because right now we have this pilot, and I feel, the union is very much not just in favor of this, but very interested in the details, and they understand the issue at a very granular level. DeJoy has done, the bare minimum right now. This is a baby step. This is the first thing that you have to do in order to get to a place where you have a bank account like product at the Postal Service. You're going to need somebody in management who understands this issue keenly to get it across the line. And so I would argue that we probably do need another member of that board that really understands postal banking in order to maximize its potential.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and come back. And David, if you can hang around for just a couple more minutes, because I want to ask you about another piece you wrote about and your take on the Progressive Caucus and what they were able to do on Thursday. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sure.
Minute and 4 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, I had down to 4 seconds. All right, we're back. And just to wrap up this conversation, David, about the Postal Service, what do we have a sense of, like, what's the timing? There's 4 cities, 4 post offices that are doing this. What's phase 2?
I mean, it's a good question. I think now that it's out in public, members of Congress are interested in this. I got notes today from Senator Warren, Senator Gillibrand, Representative Bill Pascrell, some of the big champions. They're going to test this product to see if it works. And I think there's going to be some momentum to figure out the end of that test, if it does in fact work, to expand this pretty rapidly. I mean, I think that everybody's expectation is that the next step would be to go to every postal location in those pilots, and to then look at the price point and to look at the volume, and then to do those add-ons, which, I mean, this is going to take a while overall, but I do think we're gonna get some rapid changes.
Okay, and we just want to say goodbye to our Peacock viewers. We will see you tomorrow, and see you then.
See you then.
And for everybody else, let's stick around here. So, David, the last question. So we don't know right now. This is a 90-day pilot. This is a 120-day pilot.
There's no date. It's open-ended.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't know exactly. But I mean, I know that everybody's really interested in it. And I should say that we actually had our art director, John Dos Rothstein, test this. We went to a postal location in Falls Church, Virginia, with a prospect business check, and we got it successfully put onto a gift card, and the whole process took like 2 minutes. This is viable.
It's so great. I'm so excited about this. I appreciate your contacting me. And I did guess, right? You said we should talk on Monday. You're be interested, and I said post office.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
So Emma's had to step away just for a minute, but let me ask you this. You also wrote a piece, I guess it was on Friday. The Progressive Caucus wields power. Just give me your take on this. I mean, I don't know that it's like, I think we've been more or less talking about this, that this represents a change in dynamic. And we may not see the implications of this. I mean, this is a big deal, I think, that they were able, because I really do think that the plan here, and you made the point in this piece, Manchin had said, we don't vote on the infrastructure, on the reconciliation before October 1st. And Gottheimer said, we need to vote on the other one by September 27th. I mean, that's their plan. We need to decouple these. And then all of a sudden we have all the leverage and everybody else is pushing against the string. And by holding these together, we're not going to get the number that we want. But the number really is irrelevant. There's a lot of different ways in which to make a $3.5 trillion project over 10 years into a $2 trillion thing over 5 years and say to, the Republicans, you guys want to be the ones to cut universal pre-K? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, our Harold Meyerson wrote that exact piece last week, like run on the 2024 elections on this. Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at these numbers and being like, well, they're going from 3.5 to 1.5, they were headed to 0. I mean, that was the way that this was going was we were going to get the infrastructure bill. It was going to be delinked. Democrats were going to pass that in the House. And then there was no leverage over 22, and we hit the elections and the whole agenda falls apart. That's where we were headed before progressives decided to take this stand. And so the number that is critical here is 0. So if you get 1.5 trillion more than 0, or 2 trillion, or 2.5 trillion, that's how much more you got than what you were likely to get. So that's part one. But the piece that I wrote was really as much about the history of the Progressive Caucus, which started actually 30 years ago in 1991. And it started with 6 members, so it didn't really have any ability.
It was some like just complete backbencher who nobody took seriously in the House.
That's right.
Who was one of the leaders. This guy who came from Vermont, of all places, named Bernie Sanders, who was one of the early leaders.
That's right. He founded the Progressive Caucus, and but the Progressive Caucus, through its 30-year history, for the majority of members who had joined it, was essentially a resume line item. It was, I am part of the Progressive Caucus, so I can put that on my flyer when I send it to my constituents every 2 years. There was no guarantee that meant they would vote in a certain way. There was no guarantee that meant that they would join together as a bloc to ensure a certain policy got forwarded. It was a debate club. It really wasn't much of a coherent coalition. For about 15 years, from 2003 to I think 2018, there were co-chairs of the Progressive Caucus, and that didn't mean there was twice as much organizing. It kind of meant there was half as much organizing. Right. There was just not. Sometimes the co-chairs weren't on the same page, and they didn't want to upstage out one another, or they didn't want to be upstaged by one another. It just was not a force within Congress. It was just sort of this other appendage, and that really changed with the ascension of Pramila Jayapal, who joined Congress after the 2016 elections, became co-chair after the 2018 elections, and became the sole chair after the 2020 elections. So a pretty rapid ascent. And Jayapal is an organizer. She's someone who came out of that world in Seattle. And she really is pretty responsible for turning the Progressive Caucus into a force that can set the terms of legislation. And they did that a few times in the 2019 and 2020. But, Mitch McConnell was in control of the Senate, so there wasn't a lot of follow through there, but that wasn't really her fault. But this year, there was this moment. There's a very narrow majority in the House for Nancy Pelosi. Democrats have the Senate, Democrats have the presidency. And Jayapal recognized that this gave a real opportunity to the Progressive Caucus to really, if they saw something going not in their direction, that they could take a stand and then hold to it, because the Progressive Caucus has taken stands before. They 60 of them, I think, wrote there has to be a public option in the Affordable Care Act, or else we're not going to vote for it. And then all of them voted for it. Like not most of them, all of them voted for it after. I mean, it just wasn't. They didn't have this fortitude. They didn't have this organizing skill.
Right. I mean, I guess maybe Bernie was in the Senate at that point and got the community, the money into those co-ops.
Yeah.
Those community co-ops. But this is a big deal for that very reason you just said. Like, I've used this example and I've been trying desperately to find the clip, but I know you'll remember it. I think there was a moment in Happy Days where Fonzie is teaching Richie Cunningham how to fight. And, it is revealed that that Fonzie only hit one guy. He said, I hit this one guy, and ever since then, I don't have to hit anybody again. Is this that moment for the progressives where it's like all of a sudden now, the normal calculation is, okay, I can make this deal with Gottheimer because at the end of the day, the Progressive Caucus is going to fold. The next time around, and obviously there may not even be a next time around for a long time, maybe not even for Nancy Pelosi, frankly. I mean, who knows how much longer she's going to be Speaker. But the next time around, from the get-go, there's going to be a different calculation, and that different calculation means that there won't have to be this intermediate fight, right? I mean, because the progressives have just used their, whatever it is, their strength level meter. They've just used that in a big way. They're still going to hold the line with the numbers, but also, Biden's in that fight aggressively, obviously on the number side. Mm-hmm. Next time around, they may not have to use that number just because that there's an awareness that they actually will use it. And so you don't make a deal with Gottheimer in that way. You have to refashion something else that requires less expenditure of energy by the progressives. And it could change the dynamic in which this is working going forward. A, let me ask you about that. And B, let's say that out of the 100 people in the Progressive Caucus, whatever it is, 96 or something, do people cross that divide into like, I wasn't just using this as I was using this as a branding exercise, but I wasn't prepared to take that vote. Do a couple of them say like, you know what, this is working for them. They're not paying a price here. I think I can slide into that camp. And that maybe next time, instead of getting 45 people who claim that they're going to vote against this, and I know you guys did some great work in terms of the whipping with maybe it was closer to 24 publicly, but next time maybe it's like 55 or something like that.
Well, first, I really only paid attention to the Ralph Mouth Happy Days episodes. So,
right.
I can't confirm that element of it.
Reference.
Well, okay. All right, fair enough. That may have been a little bit before your time. I know you came more when they went out.
However, I think I think you're absolutely right. So what this gets the Progressive Caucus, regardless of what happens ultimately with this bill, is it gets them respect. and it gets them respect from the leadership in Congress for certainly the remainder of this Congress and maybe the future. And it gets them respect from the sort of media institutions within Washington, that Pramila Jayapal is a player here, that you have to pay attention to this left flank because legislation depends on it. And so I think that respect has never been there before. And there was this expectation level that, yes, we can cut a deal with the 218th member of the House, and whatever that 218th member wants is what everybody else is going to have to swallow. And that calculus has to change now, that progressives need to be read into whatever deal gets made. And that's different, and that's new, and it's definitely something to watch. And I do think that courage can be contagious. That that you had, in the end, I think we had 29 members who publicly said they were going to withhold their vote, and in reality, Jayapal said it was probably closer to 50 or 60 if they actually held it on the floor. And it could be more next time, not necessarily on this bill, but on a similar kind of situation. It could be more. You know, I do think sort of there is a moth to a flame kind of element of this, where you know, you see somebody succeed and you see someone do a power move, and you want to be part of that, and you see it as a way to get your priorities done. And so I think on both counts, this is definitely, you know, a changed reality within the Congress.
All right. Well, David, I'm sure we're going to have you back sometime between now and the 31st of October when Chuck Schumer claims both these bills will be up for a vote. I cannot encourage people enough to head over to the American Prospect and read about, because I would imagine within days, you're going to start to have reporting. This is how they're going to drop these numbers. And it's either going to be, and I think you explained this to me on the on Reported on the other Peacock show. There's multiple ways in which you can do this. You can take a 10-year, you know, if something costs $20 over 10 years, you can say it only costs $10 and do it for 5 years. And that program still exists, and it's just a question of whether you leave it up to the next Congress to fund, or you can do half-ass job on all of them and make them clunky and not work. And so it may look like it's a good program, but it ends up being hurting it in the long term. That dynamic is something we're going to be looking for your reporting and the other reporting that goes on at the American Prospect. So as always, appreciate it. And I really do appreciate your calling me as soon as you knew about this post office thing.
You were the first person I called, Sam. I know that this is your hobby horse.
Like it just like all weekend, I was just like bursting at the seams. Like, who can you tell? I was like, it would be safe to tell my child. Like, I got it. It was.
You were sworn to secrecy, and you did a good job with that.
I didn't even I hinted at it to my 8-year-old only because he doesn't have any social media, but he didn't care.
Yeah, he didn't see it as he didn't ask you about the finer points of it.
I just said, you know, articulate it to him. At one point I said, like, you know, could be postal banking soon. And he was like,
and he said, can I watch the TV now?
He was like, do you know where my iPad is?
Yeah, right.
Is that a new Marvel character?
David Dayen, executive editor of the American Prospect. Always a pleasure. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
Right, thanks.
Folks, we're going to head into the fun half of the program, but first, let me tell you this. It is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member today, right this moment, by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, you also get extra content virtually every day. So check it out, jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. They had something right now. They have custom labeled bags.
What?
At Just Coffee. You got to check this out, actually. It's pretty cool.
I got to order some new cold brews. So.
You can get, I got to do this. This is a great, this is for the holidays. You can get you can get bags filled with the Revolution roast that, like 20 of them, I guess, I think is the minimum. But great, great gifts. Or for your organization or something like that. I don't know. Check it out. justcoffee.coop. Use the coupon code majority to get 10% off. Also, don't forget our Discord, majoritydiscord.com. Over 4,000 members now in the Discord.
Wow.
Powerhouse. Also, don't forget Nomi Show, youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show, youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show. Matt, what's happening in the Matt Leckian universe of media?
For patrons of Left Reckoning, on Sunday we put up a conversation we had with Sam Hoadley-Brill, a PhD student who's written on what I'm calling the CRT party, or the CRT panic, where people like James Lindsay and Chris Rufo, who we deal with specifically, have been misleading parents into thinking public schools are turning their kids into Black Panthers. Not that there'd be anything wrong with that, but so patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get that episode. It's about 50 minutes. We went for a long time. So and Sam's as good as anybody at covering these freaks. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right, folks, the number is 646-257-3920. I'm going to turn on the phones, but I'm going to warn you now. We got to end a little bit early today because I've got some important personal stuff to deal with. And so we may not get to many calls. But if you want to venture in, well, you'd be my guest. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fun half. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Say it like the Kool-Aid man. No.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I just did. Couple IMs. Emma, what's the deal with Urban Meyer career? Doesn't he have to leave each job under the threat of investigation? And doesn't he use health issues as a way to avoid investigation?
All of those things are true. This time, maybe he'll have to leave for personal reasons after getting caught at that bar grinding with that woman who is not his wife, which happened on Saturday. But I guess the stress of losing is just, it's taken such a toll on him.
Laura, all this talk of Pandora Papers. I remember the Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers, and still nothing significant done about tax avoidance and offshore banking. Yeah, I agree. And this is actually an extension of those. That same sort of trove of documents. But it's still good and important to get out there, and we're going to do a deeper dive in it and talk more about it coming days.
It is. I'm cynical that the approach of like, look at all these different journalism organizations we have working on this together, and it's this huge thing. Like, I respect everyone that's doing it and I think it's great. I worry that like if it was, oh, look at this thing that got leaked onto like some small site that you had to go get, it might be more interesting to people. Like,
right.
What do you mean, like a WikiLeaks situation?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, why would that be more interesting to people?
Because it's more, it just sounds a little bit more mysterious and sexy.
And prohibited.
And kind of what happened with Hillary Clinton in 2016, where you could look up your own stuff.
Yeah.
Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Hey guys, I thought I knew a decent amount about football. This has me very confused. I watched the Jaguars lose on Thursday, but people on Twitter were saying that their coach, Urban Meyer, had managed to grind out a W this weekend. Oh God, I don't want to get into this.
I love
D says,
making fun
Emma, it's
Urban
football.
Meyer.
Calm down, LOL.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, like, guys, all right,
Josh from Tucson, how did your phone really break, Emma? Well, I think
that's literally what happened. I lightly threw it against the couch and it hit. This is the buckle that it hit. It hit this.
Oh my God. Jen from St. Louis, go. In other news, go Cards. Yeah, baby. Okay, Sam's Finsta. There have been a lot of people criticizing you in the show for having changed since Peacock. I don't think there's been a change in ideology, but you have stopped criticizing the people on MSNBC since you joined them. So there's been a little bit of content change. Are you serious?
That's not true.
That is 100% not true.
Look up Google Stephanie Rule, Majority Report, or Morning
I
Show.
shit on Claire McCaskill or David Frum all the time. I didn't know, frankly, that David Frum is on there, but I mean, not at all. That is 100% not true. In fact, if you were in this office just today, you would understand how absolutely wrong that comment is. I mean, literally 2 hours ago, Bradley got a directive. And I would encourage you. Look, I'm going to tell you something. I don't watch MSNBC. I will once, sometimes twice a week, but generally closer to once now, I will watch Hayes's program. There has never been a time where I've really been much of a fan of anything else on MSNBC. That's just the reality of it. That's all right. I'm not, I also don't like cartoons, and I'm on Bob's Burgers. So there you go. But if you, and by you, I mean the audience, if you see clips of anything, I don't care what network it is, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, there's a lot more, we have a lot more access to, and of course they say stupid stuff all the time. But if you see anything like that, by all means, send it to us at majorityreporters@gmail.com. We have a limited ability to go in. We can't afford like TV eyes and go and say like, okay, at minute 14 on the Lawrence O'Donnell show, David Frum comes on and does yada, yada, yada. And we can find that we don't have that capacity. But if you have like a link to a video or something like that, by all means. I mean,
Email us.
Joe yeah. I mean, I'm happy to talk about Joe Scarborough, or I'm happy to talk about any of them, frankly. Honestly, send it in. Who did we just did?
Didn't we talk? We also talked about the unionization effort.
Oh my God! I had the executive director of the union that was unionizing both The Choice and MSNBC on the show twice.
Yeah.
That was just, I don't know, a month ago.
Yeah, we also
even the executive director, when I was telling him, like, just so you know, this is playing on The Choice. He's like, yeah, we're organizing The Choice. And I'm like, no. This interview is going to play on The Choice. And he's like, what? And he just started laughing.
Yeah. And we all, again, like Stephanie Rule, we've definitely recently gone after.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a problem, specifically with Stephanie Rule.
With her analysis.
What she said.
Yes. Yeah. So if you think that we haven't done enough of calling out people personally,
send us clips.
I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
We just did 10 minutes on Chuck Todd the other day.
Yes. Right, Chuck Todd and Meghan McCain, and I insinuated that potentially she's getting an MSNBC show. I don't know that, but I don't know why else she's on NBC, but regardless.
Sam's Finsta reminds me of something, and I appreciate that, and that is that we played a clip of Blumenthal on, Friday?
Yes.
Richard Blumenthal. And he was talking, he said to the Facebook executive, like, are you determined to get rid of Finsta? And Finsta is a fake Instagram account that kids set up to either according to the Facebook people, so that they can share stuff privately, as opposed to their sort of like public facing one. But it's also a way of like, so that their parents don't know, because parents sometimes monitor Instagram accounts. The sentiment is good. I think, the reason why Facebook does this is because they want to juice their numbers. So if they allow kids to have 4 or 5 Instagram accounts, which the app allows for, and, and now Twitter does the same thing. I think you can have multiple Twitter accounts.
Otherwise, I never will see what Jordan Peterson posts.
Right. But exactly. But there's also a lot of data that suggests that Instagram is really, really unhealthy for children.
And speaking of, it's down right now, trending on the internet. Instagram not working right now.
But it is widespread internet issues, not just to
interesting.
Facebook and Instagram.
Okay. Well, I just thought it would be poetic as they're having these hearings, but go on.
And so, there's an argument that you should limit the amount of accounts that people can have to 2, let's say, or whatever it is. I don't know. I don't really care. I don't use Instagram.
It's also hard
and I don't
to
care.
monitor. Like,
it's
you
also
can set
hard
it
to
up
monitor
with different email addresses.
But Blumenthal, in another part of his questioning, clearly had at least a written understanding of what a Finsta was. I think actually his staff probably knows, and he was just sort of like freelancing, and when he didn't know exactly how to, in the same way that, when I talk about, are you doing pot, instead of smoking pot?
Or my dad calls an Xbox a Nintendo.
Yeah. Or something like that.
Right.
Or, like a generic term.
Or like how my
like
dad sends me texts as letters, like, Dear Emma.
Right.
Love, Dad.
Right. Or, I say, like, is it party time? When everybody gets together to party,
Yeah.
The point is, I'm trying to come up with something, but I know
That's how Sam walks
I know.
into the office and he goes, is it party time?
What's going on, everybody? Why is everybody going? Is it party time? The point being that I think we were a little bit unfair to Blumenthal, but to be honest with you, I don't really care about that. It made it look like the government was not in a position, or these lawmakers were not in a position to know enough about the crappy crap that Facebook does to regulate them. And so we didn't post that video. Frankly, I'm not terribly concerned about the surgical regulation or the chastising of Facebook. I want them split into tiny pieces. Forget about the finstas with Facebook. Here's how you deal with that. Facebook, you can't own Instagram anymore.
Right.
Goodbye.
Not your problem anymore.
Not your problem. You don't have to work about finstas or whatever it is.
We're going to unburden you, Facebook, with the concept of Finsta and Instagram whatsoever. Or altogether.
All of these companies should be shattered into smaller pieces. We should put regulation on the ability to use algorithm and what they can use them for. We should be putting on regulations that you can't have integration vertically. You cannot buy out competitors.
Yeah, but this like technocratic approach where, we're just going to regulate around the margins and no more Finstas, and I'm worried about the effect on kids' brain chemistry. It's like a PR crafted way, which is like also funneled by a lot of these like groups that are made up of executives from the industry who are pushing these kinds of things on Democratic politicians. Like antitrust is the way to go. The rest of this stuff is just fluff.
I remember right around the time that I started at Air America, NPR did a segment where the FCC was cracking down on networks, and it was all about the wardrobe malfunction that was a Janet Jackson had on the Super Bowl.
I remember.
And I remember this vividly. I was driving in the car on the highway with my ex-wife, and we were going under an underpass. I mean, I started seeing red. Like, I almost had to pull over the car. I'm like, these mother effers. The FCC ain't doing shit. The whole thing about somebody saw a nipple on TV, that's not what the problem is. The problem is that you have a consolidation of media. The problem is that 3 different companies own every piece of information that we're getting. That's where the FCC should be dealing with this stuff. They should be imposing a fairness doctrine. They should be undermining the business plan of all of these companies. Undermining them. To just basically not allow them to make profit by merging and by diminishing the options we have and by allowing the studios to sell to the networks. That's what the FCC should be doing. The FCC ain't doing crap. And NPR, and this is when I really started like just loathing NPR. Like they are supposedly putting out the dissenting voice and like highlighting how the FCC is cracking down. This is all sideshow. And that's the thing about the Finsta thing, I don't like the fact that it makes it look like every Google executive that I have known, or Facebook executive, or any tech person, the one thing they always say to me, same thing with bankers and stuff like that, government doesn't understand what we do.
Yeah.
They're going to come in and they're going to ruin things. And then I'll tell you how that we should be regulated, blah, blah, blah. And it always is in a way that allows us to, just sort of like rapaciously create profits.
Well, yeah, the government doesn't know about the tech, but ask those tech executives to talk about body dysmorphia of teenage girls, for instance, and see how much they know.
Right. And you know what? The bottom line is, I don't care what the media knows about tech. Because this is not about ensuring
what the government. You mean
you'll figure it out. I don't care what the government knows about tech in this regard.
Yeah,
they don't need to know. They need to know about commerce. They need to know about commerce. At the end of the day, how much power is a corporation amassing? And all they need to know is it should be less. And this is how we make it less. And if something gets broken with the algorithm or we'll fix that later. That's my attitude. Break it first, right? I mean, isn't that the whole sort of mantra of the tech bros? Break it and ask questions later. That is exactly what the government should be doing. Break it up. And then if there's you know what, it's a problem because my seamless doesn't play well with my caviar or whatever the F it is. Fix that afterwards. But they're so innovative, they'll figure it out.
So was that a effort to say that like?
So sorry, Richard Blumenthal.
Blumenthal wasn't as it was later revealed. Blumenthal wasn't as like completely clueless about the concept of Finsta as that clip portrayed. It was a bit selectively edited.
Right. It was a little bit of a select. I mean, I do think he's somewhat clueless. But,
yes, he may have gotten lost in his notes and later, or
whatever. I mean, he knew enough. I mean, you could see it earlier that he was clear on what it was. It's just that
really getting clued in is breaking these things up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When we're talking about the semantics of Finsta and even the concept of the algorithm, we're playing into this exact playbook that Sam's trying to say, where like these executives present just 1 second, like an enormity of technical obstacles that are actually quite easy to get rid of as long as you're breaking up these companies, which is the exact thing they don't want.
Instead, they'll focus on something like these Finstas, where it's like a deliverable reform that we can just move on.
Right. A scalp.
I did an interview with, this is what it is. A woman named Karen Howe. She writes a technology review. And she wrote a piece called How Facebook Got Addicted to Spreading Misinformation. And Karen Howe, I think she works for MIT Technology Review. And it is behind a paywall. But it was fascinating. She embedded with Facebook for a while. And she realized like there were like 2 or 3, I'm trying to remember the specifics, teams that work on AI, right, to create the algorithm. And sort of somehow they got lost track of who she was talking to, and she sort of found out there was another one. And like there was 2 or 3 teams that were sort of public facing to make it look like they were trying to curb the possible dangers associated with an algorithm like that. Mm-hmm. But there was another one that was sort of not public facing that was like going full steam ahead. And they trumped all the other ones. There was a whistleblower, former Facebook data scientist, Frances Haugen, spoke with Scott Pelley. Just play the audio of this. Zuckerberg wants nothing more than growth, period. And if it meant literally going in and eating babies to fuel it, he would do it. Here is this audio.
Haugen told us the root of Facebook's problem is in a change that it made in 2018 to its algorithms, the programming that decides what you see on your Facebook newsfeed.
So, you have your phone. You might see only 100 pieces of content if you sit and scroll off for, 5 minutes. But Facebook has thousands of options it could show you.
The algorithm picks from those options based on the kind of content you've engaged with the most in the past.
And one of the consequences of how Facebook is picking out that content today is that it is optimizing for content that gets engagement or reaction. But its own research is showing that content that is hateful, that is divisive, that is polarizing, it's easier to inspire people to anger than it is to other emotions.
Misinformation, angry content is enticing to people and keeps them on the platform.
Yes. Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, they'll click on less ads, they'll make less money.
And there'll be less growth. I mean, that's the bottom line. That is the bottom line. There is no getting around that. There is no chastising them, this and that. A shark is a shark. And what you need to do is you need to put it in if you want to protect people who are swimming at the beach, you need to put some type of protection up. And maybe it's like a fish net. Maybe it's like a gate. Maybe it's a wall, whatever it is.
Right. Well, you need to break up the shark. We're not talking about cutting a real shark into 10 different pieces, but in this analogy, that's what we need to do.
Well, you need to kill it as a shark, and there is no inhibiting what it's out there doing. So they need to break up Facebook. period. End of story. And they need to do that with Google. And they need to do that with, I mean,
with Facebook,
is there anything left?
Yeah.
I mean, once you break up Google and Facebook, like, Amazon also, I would probably say, needs to have a whole different series of regulations. But all of this needs to happen that way.
All of these, reforms that we were discussing earlier, including making sure you're cracking down on fences. That's just like sawing down one small pointy tooth of said shark, as opposed to doing anything else, which is clearly, in my opinion, a way for a lot of these senators who have very little understanding of how any of this works, but have constituents that are upset about it. Blumenthal represents, for example, a blue state. I think there's some concern there from Democratic states in particular. They're using, I think, reform talking points from some of these executive groups that are lobbying that sound very concerned when there isn't really any wholesale change being discussed here.
That's right. You always love to give them something. That's what basically
Again,
it is.
yeah, as I said before, they need a scalp, and then the shark remains swimming in the waters.
Exactly. I mean, sharks don't have hair, but we get it.
Well, I know. Well,
all right, let's watch this guy.
With the shark metaphor.
I know that was a mistake. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. Here is Nick Clegg. This guy used to be, what was he in he was like...
He was the leader of the Liberal Democrats when they went in with the Tories with David Cameron like 10 years or so ago, and they completely, for instance, completely threw their pledge to not raise tuition fees overboard for that.
Yeah. Very Clintonian in many ways.
Oh, and so this makes total sense that this is his current position in life.
Absolutely. I mean, this is this is the equivalent of who are those Obama guys that go and work for
Facebook or Uber?
Facebook or Uber, and
Jay Carney went to work for
Pluff, Carney.
Carney went to work for Uber.
Yeah.
Or Amazon. Sorry. Yeah, there we go. It's the same kind of guy.
And kudos to Brian Stetler, for asking a question that apparently Nick Clegg did not think he would get on CNN. Here is that exchange right now, and this is fascinating. He's he was not expecting this question, that he couldn't come up with anything to differentiate Facebook from tobacco and smoking cigarettes, that he basically just made the case even further for these things being very similar.
Big brain.
And a part of me feels like I'm interviewing the head of a tobacco company right now. A part of me feels like I'm interviewing the head of a giant casino that gets rich by tricking its customers and making them addicted. The big tobacco comparison is everywhere right now. And how do you feel about those comparisons to big tobacco?
I think they're profoundly false.
Why?
I mean, I understand, of course, well, because I don't think it's remotely like tobacco. Social media apps, they're apps. People download them on their phones, and why do they do that?
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to help folks here, because this is getting pretty deep. Facebook is not like tobacco, because Facebook is an app that's on your phone, whereas tobacco is not.
I like that part, because Stelter goes, well, I mean, how is it different? How are these apps? Well, because it's an app. Well, that was already said in the question that preceded that answer.
Right. It's like it gets into the elevator pitch mode for it.
Exactly. I wonder if Stelter was going, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you smoked these websites. Okay, fair enough.
Sometimes you gum it.
But here he goes. Here he's coming with the thing that really differentiates it. Unlike tobacco, cigarette smoking, which, of course, as you know, is around the world and addicts people from every society, Facebook is different because...
Like tobacco. Social media apps, they're apps. People download them on their phones, and why do they do that? There has to be a reason why a third of the world's population enjoys using these apps. They do it because they like exchanging their views, their feelings, their experiences.
And I admit that I enjoy using Instagram. I admit that. But I also feel the tug of an addiction. Don't you feel the addiction?
Well, that's why we need to make sure that people are not being drawn towards bad experiences. That's why, and I gave you a very good example earlier, I think in the past it is true there was more hate speech on Facebook than there should have been. We applied a huge amount of resources and research. And by the way, let me give you one very simple reason why this is such a misleading analogy.
Oh, I found
people who pay our lunch are advertisers. Advertisers don't want their content next to hateful, extreme, or unpleasant content.
I see what's going on there. It's different because our business model is different. Our business model is different. We weren't sponsors on the side of a cigarette box, so it can't be the same. It would have been nice to say, no, let me explain to you the concept of a metaphor.
Well,
I am suggesting that your product is addictive and causes bad things to happen in people.
In a mass kind of way.
In a mass way that is around the world. The reason why people want to use this is the same reason why people wanted to smoke cigarettes. Because if they liked it, and they wanted more of it, and more of it, and more of it, and more of it, and more of it.
Right. I mean, I enjoyed his attempt to tread water with the, first of all, it's an app.
It's an app. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. It's an app.
It's not a smokable plant, right? But
Facebook begins with an F. Tobacco begins with a T. So it's not the same thing.
And we make our money off advertisements, and tobacco was never involved in any advertising whatsoever. So can't you... Oh, shit. Damn it, I stepped in it again.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, not even prepared at all.
It was really surprising that he was like that caught off guard.
He's never been asked a question about the addictive properties of social media. I mean, that's the number one concern for a lot of specifically parents right now.
People come into that situation with like, I've been a major political figure. I'm not worried about Brian Stetler asking me a question I can't answer.
Facebook is actually tar-free, Brian.
Oh, excuse me, Brian. Where's the filter? Do you think we have filters on Facebook? Oh, okay.
It's
Shoot.
People...
No, that I'm gonna say that.
You think it's giving people cancer, Brian? What kind of fool are you?
Do you really think our advertisers want to be next to hate speech? Well, I mean, dude, then how did this problem start in the first place?
I mean, they apparently found...
Oh, we didn't tell them. Oh, well, sorry.
Oh, and it's going to continue. We'll have a menthol Facebook, and that will solve everything.
Advertisers do not care if they're next to hate speech at all. If they will get people looking at their ads, what they care about is people knowing that they're next to hate speech.
Oh, exactly. Yes. I mean, do you think that they're actually, these advertisers are paying attention to the content if it's actually effective and gets them clicks and gets them, money?
Oh my God.
They're only going to care if there's blowback about it. But because there's this intermediary and there's this third party where Facebook is the one that's kind of, their algorithm is providing money for them, they have cover. So it doesn't, like, Facebook is actually a huge win for advertisers that want to make money on the cheap a little bit covertly with hate speech, because they'll take all the public flack and their algorithm will privately determine how their advertisements are reached to people. And then they can say, well, we didn't know, we worked with Facebook and we didn't know that they were putting our ads in front of hate speech. So it's actually a great situation for a lot of advertisers.
Oh my God. I mean, the amount of times that like places like Google and Facebook they don't care. They don't care at all. And like you say, it's just a matter of blowback. Brian, for us to believe that, we would have to believe that some major platform like AOL built itself on pedophilia. Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine?
Well, that's also what they're finding with some of this stuff with Facebook, right? With child trafficking. How Zuckerberg and the executives were aware of some of these things. That's what the whistleblower is claiming. So,
I mean, of course.
And they were okay with these monetizations. So it's almost like the heads of Facebook are also these vampires who are able to just completely compartmentalize. And as long as they're making money, just like the people we sell advertisements to, no one gives a shit.
Slappy Tubbs on IM, you kept saying the word Facebook, and I started jonesing. Finally had to check it. Facebook. Jesus, would you stop?
You know what's crazy is I don't check Facebook anymore, and I didn't make a decision to do this. There were times in my life where I'm like, I need to cut back on this, but I just don't check it anymore.
I don't even know how to. Like I don't even know how to operate my Instagram. That occasionally I can see. I had to find out like there was a, but Facebook I never got into.
It's crazy. Like I went into it recently for some left reckoning business, and I know people talk about the changes and how confusing they are, but it's a bizarre website at this point.
I can't. I can't operate any of these things, honestly.
Yeah,
I
can't. I don't.
I won't expend the mental energy to learn. I know that I could, but I just don't care.
I mean, I'm definitely addicted to Twitter, for example.
Well, Twitter, I'm all over that. All right, let's take a phone call. Calling from a 478 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Voicemail on?
478. I thought I heard someone breathing.
Ah, there we are. I'm so sorry. Hello, my name is Jeff. I'm calling you from Alabama.
Jeff from Alabama.
for now, not for too long. Hey, Sam. It's great to talk to you, man.
Jeff, how are you doing?
Up and down, man. Really up and down. I am on the road right now, but I had to call in and say thank you to you and to everyone there, to the audience, for everything that you've done on Friday and over the weekend. I'm sorry, I'm about to cry already. It wasn't fast. But it's outpouring of support has been amazing. Getting a new apartment is absolutely insane in this country. Oh my God, it should be criminal what they make people go through. But I'm feeling much better about where I'm at, and my health is doing okay. Good. Today, I feel really good.
All right. Well,
I'm so glad.
I've got about 2,000 miles of road in front of me. Well, maybe like 1,800 now.
Where are you headed?
I'm making it dented it. What's that?
Where are you headed?
I'm living in Las Vegas. No, not to gamble all the money. Put
it on red for socialism.
Parlay that.
Well, maybe I'll hit blackjack a little bit because I'm decent at it. But I just wanted to call and say thanks. I'll leave the fundraiser open for a couple more days. So I do have to drive. It's a lot of gas. I have to stay at a hotel a couple of nights. If people do want to keep helping me out. But I feel amazing. I can't believe good things still happen in this world. That's awesome.
Well,
I didn't want to ask, I'll let you go ahead, but I had one quick favor to ask you, but go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you got I am from Jenna from St. Louis, Jeff from Georgia, now temporarily in Alabama. Hit me up if you're passing through St. Louis. Check your Twitter feed, Jeff, because people are knowing that you're heading out that way. I'm sure there's a lot of folks who want to connect with you.
Yeah, and I had somebody very kind already offered me some furniture, which was very nice.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Don't really have any, yeah. So I'm thrilled about that. Yeah, and stuff like that I could really I could also use. Nobody has cash, but the question I wanted to ask you is just that I don't have like a regular gig there lined up yet, but I was thinking I might give yeehaw lessons. Sam, do you know how to yeehaw?
This is something maybe I'm thinking about taking up when I'm a little older in life. I'm thinking I used to watch Hee Haw, so I did know how to do that.
Okay, so you're like 50% of the way there. All this is really just a long way of saying Sam.
There you go. Drive carefully, Jeff. He's gone. That's awesome. All right, let's go through this. This is really interesting. I had an interesting conversation with a guy at a bike shop over the weekend. He said that his distributor cannot get so much material for bikes because, and part of it he attributed to prior to COVID, the trade war that Donald Trump had engaged in, that the Chinese were basically slowing down the supply lines. And he said then COVID exacerbated it. But one thing that he noticed, his distributor doesn't have X, Y, or Z, these special type of tires or these, these brakes or whatever it is. Amazon has all of them. And he said, he tried to get this one set of tires. He couldn't get it from his distributor. The distributor had like 10 different factories, didn't have any of it. He went on Amazon and he just wanted to see if he could go through with it, like and order 40 or 50 of these things. And they had them. This is a problem of monopoly. Mm-hmm. We have two different things going on here. We have all of this disruption that is, or really three different, all the disruption that COVID, has created, shutdowns here, shutdowns there, because our supply lines are so long. If it's something shuts down in Thailand for a week or the Philippines or in China, that's going to impact and it's going to work its way through the system. The other is all the shipping containers were sent far flung around the world and they're too expensive to come back now because they're sent to places that don't export stuff. And then the third is monopoly. You've got people who are using this opportunity to use their buying power, really in monopsony, using their buying power to essentially hoard stuff and try and knock other people out of business. But Fox and friends, they think it's something else. Here is Steve Doocy, Ainsley Earhart, and Brian Kilmeade. They're convinced it's because people are getting unemployment.
There aren't enough people to take the
Labor
stuff up.
shortage.
There aren't enough people to make the stuff.
Trucks.
All sorts of things. You're not going to get it in time for Christmas. In fact, I've noticed that, I'm not going to say the brand, but I can't get the Doocy's favorite kind of coffee because apparently they've run out of pods.
Back to Taster's Choice.
My mom loved that.
Right,
I had to
instant,
make
yeah.
it for her, yeah. The CEO of MGA, which is one of the world's largest toy maker companies, he says, I've been doing this for 43 years and I've never seen it this bad.
Right.
H&M, Bed Bath & Beyond, Nike, lots of different companies, Walmart seeing delays.
In that
we have
same
to
article,
give incentives to get people back to work. I wish it was different. Nobody wants to work anymore, and there's too many. It's too easy for people to take their
Everything's
time
free.
going back. Yeah,
Nothing costs anything, Brian.
Right.
It's free.
And so that's right.
It's zero. The problem is these shortages are all over the world. They're not just here in the United States.
Yeah, you know what that's a problem for? It's a problem for their made-up narrative that somehow unemployment benefits that have ended, they have ended a month ago.
Yeah.
COBRA benefits ended, gone. There are no subsidies for people. And those subsidies didn't exist or come back or go away all around the world. That's the problem. The problem is that that's a problem with their narrative.
Well, the issue is that the United States
lying.
is so powerful that we're influencing everybody else with our entitlement
Stay home,
mentality.
don't work.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, to the extent that there are shortages of truck drivers in this country, they also exist in France and in Europe.
England's having particular trouble right now.
They may actually have to allow immigrants into their country, which is totally another story.
The right doesn't want to happen.
Exactly. This is not about people not wanting to work. Maybe in some instances, people are like, this is not the job I want to do anymore because I don't want to be exposed to this, or I realize like, oh my God, it's just not worth it for me to go in and work at this point. But that's not the major factor that's going on here. It is not that there's too much money sloshing around and we have some type of inflation, which is like typically too much demand versus the capacity to supply. It is that our supply lines are broken, that we have monopolies that allow for very little flexibility with what we do now. All it takes is one company, one distributor to not have this stuff. And because we've had such consolidation in industries, you don't have any other people who have any other access to it.
And even for the minor problem that they're alluding to there, I mean, I think there's a hesitancy by the left to like point, there is there are some studies, not every study, but some studies that show that unemployment benefits did prevent some people or give other people an option from going back to a job that they may have not wanted to do anymore, that may have been dangerous. That's good, right? We are the richest country in the world, and so people should be allowed, or every country should be allowed to do this, but we have the leeway to be able to do so. What the pandemic did for a lot of workers, it allowed people to understand the value of their labor. When we're talking about essential workers and non-essential workers, what is the concept of essential work? People grappled with that and understood that maybe this wasn't their work if they were essential workers, that they were being undervalued, or that they didn't feel their work was essential and they wanted to do something else. And that was a good thing. We alleviated poverty in this country. So we should be able to provide these people with options. And the reality is that we're having that conversation, but even left politicians in this country don't want to say that publicly. And I think that it's incumbent on us to like break that cycle, because that was one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is I think a lot of people understood, okay, I am being criminally undervalued for my labor, and my, for example, wages need to be increased, and benefits and health protections, etc.
I mean, you think about the prevailing wage in this country has gone up so little. I mean, particularly the minimum wage. People just found a way to become more self-sufficient, maybe in some instances. Other people, I think, probably took early retirement and worked on that. And so when a certain cohort, people 60 and up, let's just say, has a higher percentage of people who decide to retire, that opens up some other jobs. That means that people have more options. Maybe they don't take the jobs that are grueling. I mean, the trucking industry. 3 years ago, to be an independent trucker, you were getting crushed in this country.
Yeah.
You were getting crushed. And I think a lot of people just said, I'll find something else to do. It really is. Oh,
and by the way, thank you, Fox and Friends. I'm sure that if you're concerned about certain kinds of labor and traditional kinds of labor, I'm sure they've been standing up to the gig economy. Right?
Yeah, highly unlikely. It's just so funny how they pivot. And then by the end of their whole segment, they have, this is absolutely true, except for the one problem is this is happening all around the world, and that doesn't, so all
and
the
no
things
one
that
in
we
their
pretended.
But their whole thing is that they don't want the United States to become like the rest of the world too. So, I mean, I don't know, but no one in their audience is paying attention enough. They got their like aggrievement morsel, and they're good to go. All
right, we got time for one more clip. We're not going to get to any calls, folks. I'm sorry. I apologize. I warned you. I did warn you. Should we do the Bernie Sanders, or what do you think? Well, I mean, I feel like
I like
Kirk
that old cinema clip, but we can.
Oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah, this is an ode to. Let's go back in time, ladies and gentlemen. Now this is probably, this is from the 50s?
No, actually, it's from 2010 at a town hall in Sedona, Arizona.
Who could remember way back then? Here's Kirsten Sinema. Was she running for Congress at this point? Who was she at this point?
I'm.
She was just about to.
Wait, you need to turn on your mic.
She was what?
She was a member of the Arizona House. She was a state rep.
Okay, she was state rep, getting ready to run for Congress. Here is Kristen Sinema. We have to go all the way back to 2010. There were cars then, right?
I think, but you had to push them everywhere.
How did they manage to amplify her voice at this time? But let's listen.
So what does that mean? Well, in the Senate, we no longer have 60 votes. Some would argue that we never had 60 because one of those was Joseph Lieberman. But that's whatever. Yeah, and Nelson too, but really Lieberman. So now there's, I think as the president so eloquently said on Wednesday, there's none of this pressure this false pressure to get to 60. So what that means is that the can stop kowtowing to Joe Lieberman and instead seek other avenues to move forward with health reform. And so it's likely that the Senate will move forward with a process called reconciliation, which takes only 51 votes. And by the way, is not unusual. You may recall that before the Democrats took the Senate in 2008, that the Republicans controlled the Senate for quite some time. In fact, since around 1994, they never had 60 votes, and they managed to do a lot of really bad things during that time. So the reconciliation process is still quite available, and we will use it for good rather than for evil.
Reconciliation process is quite powerful, and we'll use it for good rather than evil, huh? Well, I'm just endlessly fascinated by, one, this is not the only time she spoke out about Joe Lieberman specifically during her time before she was in Congress. There are quotes of her basically, I think, when he was campaigning for president, she was very public about how she opposed his candidacy because of his time as that 60th vote in the Senate. And you realize it's just a window into her sociopathy. That kind of person wasn't morally outraged by it in any real meaningful way. She's looking at that and saying, okay, I can do that too.
Yeah, I think she learned a lesson. I studied it. I got a little too close to the fire and realized that's what I should be.
Isn't that amazing?
It's like,
it's like Tucker Carlson talking about Bill O'Reilly.
Exactly.
Sam made that same point before the show too. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Great minds.
You see basically, it's one of those things like, oh, they're going to get their comeuppance. Oh, wait, they didn't get their comeuppance. I should do that.
And
that lane is actually open and you can drive in it?
Yeah, exactly.
And not only is that lane open and you can drive in it, she'll get paid buckets of money for driving in it. You'll get a per diem.
That is really the question. It's very, very hard to figure out what the end game is here, because I do think that the lobbying is not going to work. She doesn't have a lobbying future with this. Because all the people presumably she's going to lobby on the Democratic side, right? That's why you hire a former Democratic senator to lobby your fellow Democrats. I don't know. I mean, like, who is she going to lobby? I think people are pissed. She may get a job in, a corporate job where they just go like, oh, we're going to hire you because of... Thank you for getting rid of the prescription drugs. And you're now.
She should have been a Mark Warner type. If you really want to be a lobbyist, you still have to make friends within Congress and you do it
Evan
behind.
Bayh.
Yeah, do it behind the scenes.
Evan Bayh.
Right.
But we'll see. I can't wait. I cannot wait until we see the video of her protesting somebody. There has to be video.
I know.
Right?
I mean, there are a lot of great articles on it recounting it, and she was quoted in papers as a Green Party activist, among many other things, in the early 2000s. But I wish there was more footage like that, because that is just unbelievable.
All right, got to go do some IMs, and then I got to run. I got 6 minutes. It's always snowy in Ottawa. What day was yesterday? Sunday. Smoke and shire out loud. If you were as full of shit as cinema, you'd use the bathroom privately too. Mama's India. Mama's cinema. White liberals don't decide what legitimate protest is. Whenever you guys say tort, I think of John Tortorella.
John Tortorella is a former head coach of the Rangers.
I don't know who that is.
Can I say, I think white liberals can have some input on what legitimate protest is. I don't think senators particularly should have input.
And I think you made this point, Matt, longtime news correspondents who cover Congress are like, I'm going to give a lesson on activism.
Well, that's a whole other thing where a senior White House correspondent is 36 years old. What kind of institutional memory could that person have?
Right. I remember when during spring floralia, I remember covering, George Bush in his second term when he was a lame duck.
This is ageist.
Dixon Uraz. Wait a second. There's something going on there. I can't quite figure it out, but I'm not going to. If the Senate has to meet on Halloween, at least cinema shows up in costume. Sam's, I don't know what that means. Sam's dripping. What up, MR Crew? Hey, Sam, for the next fundraiser, you should see Walk. I don't even know what's going on here. I'm on to Huggin' and Hold. My favorite Happy Days episode was when Chachi threatened to sue someone over Twitter for libel. Everyone laughed at him until he made his Twitter account private, and none of us had to hear from that little puke again. That's pretty funny. Scott Bale. Sam's hanging Chad. I feel like Biden secretly read The Art of the Deal during his time off after the Obama presidency. His negotiating skills are, as Trump would say, not very good. Militant apathy. Thiel was just in the right place at the right time, i.e. Joss Whedon. Between the 101 and the 5, also consumerism. Oh, sorry. Going postal banking. It's so funny when people critique this show for being corrupt or the SMTH or something. I don't know what that means.
Something.
Do they realize that the Majority Report is one of the only leftist shows that doesn't put content behind a paywall? That is the most leftist thing a show can do, and personally why I'm a member. Also, consumerism is probably at its lowest point since Reagan. Like, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why they should buy stuff they don't need. Indeed, I think that's true. Spocko, last year at this time, Trump tweeted he had COVID. He tested positive days before with the Abbott test, but he didn't quarantine and traveled to multiple states. He didn't tell his staff nor the people he was meeting with that he had tested positive. The public's right to know about a colonoscopy is not the same as their right to know about a contagious individual in their midst. What is the doctor's responsibility about reporting someone with a deadly infectious disease who is meeting with people in public in multiple states? I know, it's nuts. Stop the meal. Thiel clearly doesn't have a problem with Google. He just thinks that he should be the one wielding the power they possess. Well, this is the thing that you hear this from a lot of the people who I think are, sort of like Thiel-esque. They will talk about the Democratic establishment, Google, CIA nexus, all of which may be true or not true, but they will not come up with a structural issue to deal not just with Google, but anybody who may be the next Google. They will not come up with those solutions because really genuine neoliberalism is not just a belief in the market. It is a uber alles. It is a Straussian vision of the world where a certain group of people who have the knowledge should be controlling. And the government is only important insofar as it's a vehicle for essentially choosing the primary winner within a market. And essentially, like, I mean, that's why, it's the investor, the dispute system of those trade deals. They want less democracy, more concentration of power amongst specific corporate players. That's what came out of Mont Pelerin. That's the pure stuff. And so when you demonize one of these players in there, and I have no problem demonizing Google, but you demonize all the players, because then what you're really doing is you're avoiding demonizing the game.
Yeah. Because what they're doing is they're avoiding any kind of structural complaint about capitalism, for instance, and instead swapping in degenerate liberals. That's why free speech is under attack. It's all the liberals we have now are degenerate, unlike the other ones, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing now in media and wherever.
If we replaced the CIA with a good CIA, if we replaced Google with a good major corporation that owned all that, if we replaced the liberals with good people who are in charge of this,
we replaced YouTube with Rumble, for example.
Right. I mean, the problem is that we have a lack of competition, that we have, oligarchic and monopolistic power. Not that there's something unique about them beyond that. It's 2:15. All right. Wish Peter Thiel call in debate. Sorry, Michael wasn't here for the Peter Thiel convo. Indeed, he would have enjoyed it. It's not you. What's up with Sarah the Domer Silverman? I saw something about that. I think she's got a blind spot about Israel, to be honest with you a little bit. BS, a libertarian caller would get Sam out of bed faster than anything else. I mean, there's some truth to that. All right, 4 more. Chantel. Hey, Sam, I was a big Jimmy Dore fan until the forced the vote shenanigans, and that is when I started watching you. His recent vaccine campaign is quite simply dangerous indeed. Meanwhile, I must acknowledge the gumption and sincerity it takes from your end every day to take calls and messages every day, and from many from me that were quite contrarian or even disparaging sometimes. It took me more than a few weeks of listening to build my respect towards you. More power to you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
An acquired taste.
Indeed.
That's awesome.
Indeed. Like a fine wine. PodSave fan. Emma, I'm a big fan, and today I was so pleasantly surprised to see you engage on Twitter with Tommy from PodSave America. I'm a big-time listener and thought due to their centrist Obama fanboy positioning, MR and PodSave America would be opposite ends of scale. I can tell you this, like, for a long time...
I met Tommy in person. He's really, really nice, and so that's why we were interested. Like, that's why I know him.
I will tell you that I literally had on my dating profile for a while, let me tell you why you can do better than PodSave America.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's not, I've never listened to Pod Save America except like in a little bit of mocking sometimes, but that's the only reason why.
I think some of their, I haven't listened to any of their stuff ever. And I would say that I think they're...
I met him through Jordan Owl and just like a bunch of other people, but yeah.
For the most part, I have sort of a disdain for them generically in terms of like in their aesthetic too.
To Obama.
Way too Obama.
Yeah.
But on some level that animates their attacks on Biden, I think. And so I think, and there's been with some sectors of the Obama world, like a realization that like, oh shit, maybe we fucked up. But I don't listen to them enough to know really, frankly. But also, if you have clips you want me to crap on Pod Save America, send them. Definitely.
The infighting report.
Pierre Pants. I'm 26 and honestly learned what a finsta was from Sam Seder. You are welcome. You are welcome. Two more. Hudix Nexic. You heard it here, folks. First, Sam is pro shark death. Sad. Cocaine isn't like crack because it's powder. And the final I am of the day. Sorry.
Charge.
Jay Chivone. Last spring, I bought a Trek bike from my local dealer. A few weeks ago, I got them to provide a firm delivery date. October. Sounds great, I said. 2022.
Wow.
They continued. And that has to do with what's going on in China. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth